What's up, guys? Going live, little impromptu live session. Trying something out. To be quite honest, the reason I'm doing it is because I found out with my latest contract that I thought it was going to be due at the end of July, so I thought I was going to have a whole month to work on it. Found out the other day that no, it's actually mid-July, so what I thought I had a whole month to work on, now I have 2 weeks to work on. So I'm going to be very, very busy the next 2 weeks, and to be quite honest, it usually takes about 4 to 5 hours to create like a proper video. Hey guys, what's going on? I'll get to you guys after the intro. So it normally takes about 4 to 5 hours to make a proper video. However, like I said, I'm going to be completely slammed the next 2 weeks, so you might be seeing these impromptu live streams coming in just because it's easier for me to get content out and interact with you guys. And it's only going to take me like a half hour to get a video out. So anyway, yeah, for those that just came in, like I was saying that I had a contract that I thought I was going to have an entire month to work on, but I found out I'm only going to have 2 weeks to finish. So it's going to be a quite busy 2 weeks. So, but anyway, what I wanted to talk about today, just to give a quick agenda, is you know, the iPhone turned 10. I'm sure you guys saw it on social media. I'm sure we all have fond memories of the iPhone. I'm going to tell a story about 2 iPhones that are, you know, pretty special to me. Sounds weird to say that a phone is special to you. Then I want to talk about mentorship. I've been getting hit up a lot about personal one-on-one coaching and mentorship. So before I dive into all that, let me take a look at the chat. Let's see. Hey Adnan, hey Han, all the best. All right, thanks guys. Feel free to ask questions as I talk. I'll get to some Q&A at the end. But yeah, let me start off with the iPhone story. So my first iPhone was the 3G. So I didn't get the iPhone, you know, the day it came out. I was kind of one generation behind. But I was pretty early on the 3G, and I've had one ever since. It's interesting because that was back in the day when you had to be on AT&T to get the iPhone. You know, they had the exclusive deal. And where I'm from in Pennsylvania, everyone had Verizon. Like Verizon has like a monopoly on the area, and basically no one would switch. Because if you remember back then, the cell phones, like you had unlimited minutes. This is back when minutes actually mattered on your cell phone plan. And if you were like Verizon to Verizon or AT&T to AT&T, you had unlimited. So great network effect working for Verizon there. And so nobody in my area would switch to AT&T to get the iPhone, except for me, because I'm crazy. So it's kind of funny because I was the only one in my area basically with an iPhone, and I got made fun of for it. It's kind of funny. Everybody was like, why do you need that? You don't need all that. You don't need the internet on your phone. And now, you know, a couple years later, everyone had one and nobody can live without it. So interesting story about the first ever iPhone I had. The next iPhone that's special to me is the iPhone 6 Plus, which I have right here. Now, you may say, who cares? Why is that special? This is actually the first iPhone I ever developed on. And this may look familiar to you guys. This screen, see all those app icons? Yeah, this thing, I've cleaned it up since then, but this thing was just filled with me doing tutorials online, YouTube videos, you know, not when I was making them, when I was actually watching other people's YouTube videos. So you guys, that probably looks familiar to you, all those crazy, you know, blank icons, but my phone was just filled with that. So this phone's special to me. It was the first one I ever plugged in, started developing on. This is what turned the tide to, I was just a user of the iPhone and a fan, and then now with this iPhone, it became like my life. It sounds weird to say, but you know, it was just, I went from being just a user of the iPhone to now the iPhone being my career. So that's why that one's special to me. That was pretty cool. Before I talk about the mentorship, let me catch up on we'll do some Q&A real quick a little bit. Andrea says, don't you ever feel tired of what you do every day? I mean, every day you wake up and do 8 to 10 hours of coding. I would say I do 8 to 10 hours of coding every day. Sometimes it happens to me and I need to take 1 to 2 weeks off to do something different. How do you stay motivated during that time? This is a good question, actually. So yeah, I do get kind of sick of coding, especially when you're stuck on a problem. Like I know I've mentioned in previous videos that you have to love powering through that problem, and you do, that's true. But like you said, sometimes you're just like, I don't want to mess with that right now, and you do need to take a little bit of a break. For example, I'm kind of in that spot right now. Like in my project, I'm dealing with Stripe integration. So I'm integrating Stripe, and I've actually never done that before. So it's the first time. So there's some growing pains learning how to do it and implementing it for the first time. And yes, like for example, it's what, 9 a.m. my time, and I haven't sat down to start coding it. And I'm kind of dreading it because I'm like, oh, I know it's going to be a rough day. That's all. But I am going to stick with it. But you're right. You have to take breaks. You can't get burnt out. I think you mentioned you take 1 to 2 week breaks. That's a long time. I might take a day off or two, or maybe take a nap, watch some TV for a little bit in between. I don't know if I've ever taken like 2 weeks off just to recharge, but you know, to each their own. That may be what you need. That would be my recommendation, is do what you need to do to get back on track. Like, don't burn yourself out and give up on programming. I've seen a lot of people do that. They just go hardcore, like you said, for 12 hours a day, and then they end up hating it. So do what you need to do to make sure you still love programming and what you do. Hello from Ireland. Hey, Alan. Milo says, great videos. Thank you very much. You helped me a lot. Greetings from Serbia. Thank you. You're welcome. Glad it helps. Hari from India says, we want more videos with auto layout and with complex design. Okay, I can do that. That's actually not on my list. As I've mentioned in answering comments, I have a very long video list to get through. That is actually not on it, you know, creating a complex design in storyboard and auto layout. So I will add that to the list. Speaking of, it's a good segue. If you're not familiar with my Patreon page, it's just patreon.com/SeanAllen. There I post my entire video list for a part of the community, and I'm taking suggestions and feedback. So if you're not familiar, and I've talked about it before, and I'm not going to pitch it too much, but the Patreon page is a way to support me and become a tighter part of the community to help provide feedback on what videos I make and how the channel is going. So check that out if you want. All right, there's no questions right now, so I'll move on to mentorship. So yeah, keep asking questions if you have them. I'll get to them. So the mentorship thing is, I've been getting a lot of emails and Twitter DMs asking if I do like personal coaching or mentorship, like one-on-one Skype calls to go through your code base and go through your code. Originally, that wasn't part of the plan, but because I'm getting asked about it a lot, I'm kind of like, okay, yeah, let me try to figure something out. So like I said, these would be one-on-one Skype sessions, going through your code base, going through your problems, helping you, get over the hump with something, I don't know, anything you don't understand about coding. It's one-on-one session. If that's something that interests you, I would love to hear from you. Hit me up on Twitter DM or email me, just because I'm not exactly quite sure how I want to structure that yet. So I would love to talk to you and find out what you guys want from that kind of interaction, and then go from there. All right, so the next thing I wanted to talk about was my vlog. A lot of people are asking, hey, where are the vlogs at? Make more vlogs. And like I've mentioned before, the vlogs are my favorite videos to make. I want to make them. However, my job search, they said by the end of the week. I still haven't heard anything. It is, Friday morning, so hopefully I hear something today. But the vlog I'm currently making is going through this process of the interview, waiting for the results, and then, if hopefully the offer comes in, go through the offer process. So that's what this whole vlog is about. So I expected to know all this at the end of last week. So the vlog is kind of like in limbo right now with a half-made episode. So as soon as I get resolution on that, I'll pump it out. Feel free to keep asking questions, because to be quite honest, after my iPhone stories, the mentorship, and the vlog, I don't really have much to talk about. I was kind of hoping for more questions. But like I said, I wasn't sure how many people I would get, because this was a surprise live stream, right? This wasn't a scheduled one. It was just kind of out of nowhere. So I'm still happy to see 16 people here. I was kind of expecting, 5 or so. All right, got some questions coming in. Can you make some core data videos for Xcode 8+? By the way, great videos. Thanks, Addis. So core data, I'm a little torn on that, because, and you guys let me know, maybe it's different where you're at. With core data, a lot of people don't use it here in Silicon Valley. They either use Realm or build their own custom thing. Core data kind of has a bad rap. A lot of people will talk crap on it, and they don't like using it, and they say it's a pain. So it's not a common thing. I don't know where you guys are, because I've gotten a lot of questions about it. So I don't know where you guys are getting the feeling that you need to know this and that this is a vital part. So I would love to hear if it is more popular in your area or the apps you're working on. But here, at least in this market, it's not that commonly used. So I don't know if I want to go through the painstaking, because I would have to learn it, because like I said, I've never really used it because it's not common here. So I don't know if I want to go through the pain of learning it enough to make a video on it if it's not incredibly valuable to you. Don't get me wrong, if in other parts of the world everybody's using it and it's valuable, then yeah, I will do it. But I just want to make sure you guys aren't trying to learn that because somebody told you or you read somewhere that you should learn it. And again, I'm only speaking for my market, but it's not common here at all. Todd Gore asks, are programmers paid hourly, salary? Do you work overtime? So both. Programmers can be paid salary if they work at a job, and then like me right now, so I'm interviewing for full-time jobs because I don't know if you see my previous vlogs, independent contracting, it's not for me. I'm getting bored working out of my apartment by myself every day. I kind of don't like that, so that's why I'm looking for full-time. But Todd, to answer your question, is you can do both salary or contract or a combination. So even when I was at my other job, full-time salary, I was doing contracting on the side for hourly rates just for extra money. And to be honest with you, the reason I was contracting wasn't because I needed money. It was because I needed more experience building apps, and that's all I wanted to do. So I was trying to gather experience as fast as I possibly could. So that's why I was doing contracting on this side. But yeah, to answer your question, you get paid both. And then do you work overtime? So if your salary, that's the tricky thing, right? If your salary, you could have, like if it's the day before a release, like a patch release or something like that, you could be working 10, 12 hours a day, and no, you're not getting overtime. It's just your salary is your salary no matter how many hours you work. So there's benefits to being a salaried employee, and there's benefits to being an hourly employee. Maybe I'll make a video talking about the difference. That's actually a good idea. I can't get into it now because I would have to think about it, but I am going to make that video. Good idea. Thanks, Todd. So mostly my developer community uses FMDB SQL. I know what SQL is, but I'm not 100% familiar with FMDB is. But yeah, like I said, core data is pretty rare. Any recommendation on using backend services for apps? So Sean, good to see you again, Sean. I think you're 3 for 3 now. I like it. Yeah, so Firebase is the big one. I've used Parse before, but as I mentioned before, Parse has shut down. Facebook killed it. So Firebase, I believe, is the go-to backend as a service, but to be completely transparent, I don't work with those a lot because the projects I work on are typically more well-funded projects and they build their own custom backend. So I don't have to really build my own and use the backend as a service, which I should probably learn how to because I know it's very common in development, right? Because a developer can't, build it all, and startups are trying to save money. So, but yeah, the long story short is I don't have a lot of experience with a Firebase backend or anything like that. So it's hard for me to I don't like talking about stuff I don't know or can't speak intelligently on. So I would have to do some research on that. But yeah, I can't help you there, Sean. But Firebase is the big one. And there's a ton of tutorials on it. So I would recommend Firebase only because there's a lot of people using it and there's a big community around it. So I won't be able to help you, but there's a community around it that will be able to help you. Gabrielle says, what was the first app that you made into the App Store? It was called Fit Hero. It's actually no longer on the App Store because, like I just mentioned, it was built in Parse with the backend, and then Facebook shut down Parse, so basically we lost our entire backend. We had the choice of building our own backend or just kind of shutting down the project, and because the people I was working with, we all went our separate ways, we decided to shut down the project. But if you check out my website, seanallen.co, scroll down to my portfolio a little bit, you'll be able to see some screenshots. Basically what it was pretty cool. It gamified your steps, like your Fitbit and Apple Watch steps. So it was basically a game around that, and you had to go on quests, and you could get new heroes, and you had to go up a cartoony map. It was pretty cool. I liked it. I wish we could have worked on it more, but we didn't. Sean says, hi from Chicago. What up, Sean? Are more of your coding interviews done on a computer or on a whiteboard? It's actually 50-50. If you're typically you do the recruiter call first, and that's like a half-hour call, and that's pretty easy to pass. They just make sure you're not crazy. Second is a 1-hour technical phone screen. Now, I would say about 70% of those, you're going to be screen sharing with somebody over Skype, and you're going to be coding on a computer on like CoderPad or just any text editor. They're going to give you a problem, and you're going to code, and your screen's going to be shared, and you're going to walk through it with that. So, however, that's like the like I said, the phone screen, but face-to-face on site, you're going to be on the whiteboard 90% of the time. So the phone screen, the 1 hour, like I said, 70% of the time you're going to be coding. The other 30% of my phone screens have just been like, they're just grilling me with questions where I'm not actually coding, but they're just basically asking me all about, basically all my coding interview question videos, how does memory management work with ARC, delegates protocols, communication patterns. So I would say most of the time you are going to be coding, but every once in a while you'll get one where they just drill you with questions. Sorry, I'm going to mispronounce this name. Raghu, R-A-G-H-U. Can you reveal some coding questions which was asked in an interview recently? Honestly, they're very repetitive. That's why I made the series, my Swift interview question series, about, if you look on my channel, like I said, memory management, communication patterns, networking. I haven't made the networking video yet, but if you just go through that video series, that is basically the core of all the questions you're going to get asked about iOS. Now, the coding question, which I just started doing these kind of videos, the coding challenges, those are different because you never really know what they're going to ask you. It's commonly referred to as like the algorithm lottery, because if they ask you an algorithm question and you've done it before, you know it, like, cool, you hit the lottery, you're going to be able to do the problem. But if they ask you something before that you've never even heard before or never even heard that type of problem, you may struggle. So like I said, I would go through the interview series I have, and that's going to cover pretty much everything. Like I said, the videos I have left to do in that series are networking, so I got to do that. Closures I want to do, and then debugging, because debugging is a big one too. Excuse me. A lot of times they'll put a computer in front of you and say debug this code, but you can't like run it in Xcode. Like, you know how in Xcode when you run it, you'll get all the errors, it'll yell at you, it'll tell you it's wrong. But in the interview, you're not going to have the benefit of that. They're going to just show you the code, and you have to kind of look through the code and look for the stuff that's causing issues. And most of the time, it's your force unwrapping optional is wrong, or you're not uploading, or I'm sorry, you're not refreshing the UI on the main thread. Excuse me. And then there's a lot of like memory leak issues there. But I'm going to do a video on that too. So those are the 3 on the interview questions that I still have left to do. But to answer your question, if you just go through that series, you'll be good to go for the iOS question portion of it. Then it's just up in the air for the coding challenge, because like I said, you never know what they could ask you. All right, you're welcome, Sean. Karthik, hi Sean, what's the difference between Objective-C and Swift? That's a pretty big question. Basically, Swift is just a more modern language. Objective-C has been around for 30 plus years, I believe. I mean, I'm going to have that number slightly wrong, but a long time is the point. So Swift is just Apple's answer to a more modern language, because if you've ever written Objective-C, especially after writing Swift, it's brutal going back with all the square brackets everywhere and semicolons, and it's a very, I don't know. I don't like writing Objective-C now that I've been writing Swift. So long story short, it's just Swift is a modern language from Apple now, just kind of getting with the times. Hey Ben, what's up? Good to see you again. Ben's been having fun with my coding challenges. He's been playing along with me. He kind of goes and tries to find a different solution to the coding challenges. And those videos and those questions, that's the cool thing, is there's probably 10 different ways to solve it. So it's cool to see people taking those coding challenges and trying to find a different way to solve it. And not only is that cool for me to see, but that's going to help them learn so much more. So if you guys aren't doing that, maybe try giving that give that a try. Ada says, yes, debugging is great. Not a lot of videos on that. That is a great topic. Yeah, I agree. And it kind of caught me off guard the first time I got asked it, because I'm sure, like you guys, I don't do any debugging until Xcode yells at me with a red error. And I'm like, oh, I messed something up. Let me debug it. I've never really had to like look through code without the benefit of those errors and try to find it. So it is good practice to do that. So yeah, I'm excited to make that video. I'll prioritize that video. Yogesh says, what is JSON? JSON is JavaScript-oriented notation. I believe I have that correctly. Basically, it's a way for, and I'm probably going to butcher this. This is just the way I understand it, so I'm probably not going to give the exact textbook answer. But it's basically just a format to communicate, via networking from the app to the server. So, for example, when you're making a network call and you get the response from the server, most of the time it's going to be in JSON. You have to take that JSON, parse out the information, and then create your objects in Swift, in Xcode. So to sum that up, because that's a pretty big question that I could do a whole video on, it's basically a language that will help communicate between the client side and the server. Juan says, hi Sean, I would like to see a unit testing video. Yes, that is on the list. I agree. That is, if you remember, if you've seen my interview questions video, you know that that hurt me a lot in my previous interview process when I did this a few months ago, because I didn't have experience testing, and a lot of people wanted that. So I'm absolutely going to make a testing video. It is important. If you're just learning out, it's easy to skim over testing because you're busy just learning Swift in general. But when it comes time for you to actually try to get your first job, definitely don't neglect testing. Do a bunch of tutorials on that. Try and implement a testing suite into one of your apps. That is absolutely something you need to know, and it 100% hurt me a lot the last time I went out and did a bunch of interviews. So learn from me. What about macOS and watchOS tutorial? So I've never actually built a macOS app or a watchOS app. Well, first of all, watchOS is kind of dead. Nobody really uses third-party apps. I was super excited about it when it first came out, and I totally planned on it. But then seeing the reception, like I feel, waste of time is a hard word, but I feel my time is better spent elsewhere than building a watch app right now, just because the platform is kind of I don't want to call it dead, but people are just using the native apps. Not a lot of people are using third-party watch apps. Todd Gore says, how important are APIs? Should I learn REST APIs? Well, APIs are very important. That's how you communicate. I'm assuming you're talking about server to the phone client. Yeah, pretty much every app is going to have some server element to it, so you absolutely should learn how to use it. I don't know if you should learn how to build it yet. Like if you're just learning to program, trying to learn how to program in Swift and apps and the server at the same time would be a lot to take on. But if you already know how to program in Swift and you're good at it, you've been doing it for years, like that's kind of where I'm at now. I want to learn how to program APIs on the server. Excuse me. But that's kind of on my to-do list. I mean, I'm a pretty busy guy. I got a lot to do. But to answer your question, Todd, it is very important. Learning how to do both is probably a bit much. Learn one, then learn the other. But you're definitely going to have to learn how to interact with them. Sean says, what are your favorite third-party iOS libraries? So in general, I try to avoid third-party libraries. However, there are some that are pretty much not required, but very common to use. The reason I like to avoid third-party libraries is because you're depending on somebody else's code. So if you put in 50 libraries into your project, and for example, when they made the upgrade from Swift 2 to Swift 3, everybody had to upgrade their libraries. So you're counting on all those people to make sure they upgrade to Swift 3, and if they don't, then you got to find a new library or implement some different code. So basically what I'm trying to say is you're depending on other people, so I would keep your third-party libraries to a minimum. So to answer your question, the ones I use most are AlamoFire for my networking, SV Progress HUD. That's just a simple progress HUD. So for example, when the network call is going, the little spinner, I don't really use the Apple native spinner. I use SV Progress HUD a lot. What are some other ones I use? Those are basically the only two that are pretty much in every project. The other ones are as is. But yeah, AlamoFire and SV Progress HUD, check those out. I'm probably going to do a video on SV Progress HUD just because it's so easy to use and I like it a lot. Unit test is something we all, the professional developers, prefer to be silent about. Yes, unit testing is one of those things that, a lot of people don't like to do it, but it is, unfortunately, it is something you got to do. It's not fun, that's for sure, at least to me. Is it legal to use GitHub repositories in public apps, Yogesh? I'm not 100% sure what you mean. All my apps are on GitHub. They're on private repos, so I'm not sure what you mean by that. GitHub is where basically a lot of people store their code. Even the companies I worked at, like the company had a GitHub, and their product was on GitHub. So I'm not sure what you mean by that, but yeah, we'll go there. Ben says, I'm looking for my first job as an iOS developer, mainly a web dev experience, so coding is up there, but I'm lacking portfolio. What apps or project would people want to see? The portfolio for the apps, they want to see that you can basically do the basic iOS stuff. So make sure you have networking in your app. That's a big one, obviously. Make sure you can hit an API, which if you're a web developer, you probably are very familiar with. They want to make sure you can hit an API, return it, and show it properly. Table view with downloading images from the internet and caching them and having the table view experience be smooth scrolling. So that's a big thing. As you may know, I don't know if you've ever experienced an app where you scroll the table view and the images take forever to load. That's bad programming. There's a way around that to make it so it's a very smooth experience. So hitting the networking API is a big one, Ben. Make sure you do one with that. Yogesh says, do you master Objective-C? No, 95% of my career has been written in Swift. I learned in Objective-C at my bootcamp, and then I did a small project recently converting an Objective-C code base to Swift. But flat out, I don't know much Objective-C. My whole career has been Swift, and that's on purpose. Because Swift is where Apple is going. That's the future. I knew it was going to take me a few years to become great at Swift, so I didn't want to spend any time on Objective-C. I wanted to be all in on Swift. That way, by the time I got good in a few years, everything was Swift and I was good at Swift. I didn't waste time. Again, waste time is a strong word. I don't want to say that. I didn't take away time learning Swift to learn Objective-C. So that's the way I went with it. We'll see how it plays out. I mean, admittedly, I have missed a couple opportunities because I don't know Objective-C. So it's a trade-off. Sorry, someone's texting me. So yeah, it's a trade-off to give up opportunities now, but I think in the long run, it's definitely going to benefit me. Any website's good for learning to program except Ray Wonderlic. Obviously, I plug that site all the time, not affiliated. I just think it's awesome. No. I mean, I'm sure there are. Like, Treehouse was good for the basics, but I mean, Ray Wonderlic just blows everybody away, in my opinion. And then just, there's a lot of good YouTube channels. Mine, haha. Let's Build That App is a good YouTube channel. Definitely check that one out. There's some other good ones out there, but the only one I would pay for is Ray Wonderlic. If you find one that's free, sure. Nikhil says, "Hi Sean, finished my first app. You really inspired me. Did a Mac OS VM on Windows. Don't even know what that is. Struggled with build times, as you said. Not sure what you mean. Oh, okay. So you were building it on a Windows machine. I don't know. You might have to clarify that, Nikhil." Yogesh says, "What do you want to say about iOS 11 as a developer?" The big thing about iOS 11 is the drag and drop on iPad. I don't really have iPad-centric apps, so that's not really an issue for me. But that is the major new thing with iOS 11, aside from the AR kit and machine learning and all this stuff. Todd Gore, is copying code from the net common, or is that a big negative? It's common. I think it's both. It's common, and it's probably a negative, right? If you're just copying and pasting code, putting it into your project without understanding it, you're not learning anything. That being said, I still do it all the time. I Stack Overflow stuff. But what I do though, so I may do it a little different. So if I find an answer on Stack Overflow, I copy and paste it into my project, and then I dissect the code line by line to figure it out. I wouldn't copy and paste it blindly and just be like, okay, that worked, and move on. Like, sure, copy and paste it in, but make sure you understand it before moving on. That is, I think, the big caveat with copying and pasting code from Stack Overflow. Don't do it without understanding what the code's doing. Sean asked, "Do you ever use a lot of Grand Central Dispatch?" I'm confused between using that and ILMoFire. So they're different things. Grand Central Dispatch is okay, try not to get on a whole rant here. It's Grand Central Dispatch is basically threading within your app, whereas ILMoFire handles networking, like bringing in information from the web. So for example, if you're downloading something from the web, like using ILMoFire, what Grand Central Dispatch will do is it'll download that information on a background thread so people can still use your app on the main thread. And then once all that is downloaded in the background and it's ready, then you can update your UI on the main thread. So what Grand Central Dispatch and concurrency and threading, and I'm going to do a video on this soon, is basically just controlling that, what's on the background and what's on the main thread, essentially within your own app. Okay, got a lot of questions flying in here. Got to catch up here. Virtual. Cody Walters asks, how much of Cracking the Coding interview have you gone through, and how did you approach questions in the book? I'm currently studying that book, and it is so large. Yes, Cody. It's right here. You see all these guys. And there goes the basketball. It's hard because the book's in Java. So there is actually a great GitHub repo. If you Google it, Cracking the Coding interview is written in Swift. People there solved all the questions in Swift. So that will help you out a ton if you're learning Swift specifically using that book. But yeah, it's not an easy book to get through. That being said, it's an amazing book. I highly recommend it. But it's going to take work to get through. But that work is going to benefit you so much in the long run. How I approached it, I just went chapter by chapter doing all the questions. As you know, if you're reading the book, the questions get harder as you go. Like, I think the first coding section is like on arrays and stuff. And like the first 5 questions are pretty reasonable, but then like the last 2 questions get pretty tough. So I didn't really do those. I just kind of made sure I knew the basics, because quite honestly, in these interviews for the whiteboarding, most likely they're not going to ask you some crazy, ridiculous, difficult question. The question they're going to ask you is going to be pretty reasonable. So yeah, so I wouldn't stress too much on learning the hard questions. Milo says, what do you think about Kotlin, since it's similar to Swift? Did you consider to work both iOS and Android? Yes, Milos, I've addressed this before. Kotlin, I don't know it, but I do know it's extremely similar to Swift. And if/when I do decide to try an Android project, it will 100% be in Kotlin, just because it's going to be easier to learn because it is so similar to Swift. So I haven't learned it yet, but I will. And when I do Android, it'll be in Kotlin. Shruti asks, hi Sean, you inspired me a lot. I'm not coming from a computer science background. Any good books for iOS basic foundation stuff? To be honest with you, I did books for the computer science stuff and the algorithms. I don't do books for the iOS stuff just because, especially in Swift, it's changing all the time. And books, as you know, can get outdated quickly. I just do online tutorials, blog posts, YouTube videos. Again, raywonderlic.com. I would recommend for iOS basics going more the online route than the book route. That's just my opinion. So I can't recommend books because I don't know any. So I would definitely stick with the online route for iOS and Swift just because it's changing so much. Yogesh says, what is Kotlin? Kotlin is basically a new first-class language on Android that is very, very similar to Swift. That's basically what it is. Yeah, Cody, I'm blaming that basketball on you. It's in my kitchen now. I don't know what it's doing. All right, I'm going to go for like 2 more minutes. It looks like this Nikhil is like my last question. So and I'm at the 30-minute mark. That's usually how long I go. So if you have any last-second questions, go ahead and get them in now. If not, I'm going to answer Nikhil's question and then head out. So Nikhil says, yep, I made an app on macOS virtual machine running Windows. Will be buying my first Mac after using Windows for a decade. Yeah, I've never developed an app not on a Mac. So I'm sure that's probably pretty rough, but definitely, yeah, get a Mac. And I don't know if you saw the last live stream. Don't get a MacBook Air, even though it's the cheapest. You're going to struggle. So yeah, definitely get a good Mac. And yes, Todd, that is the link. I believe so, to the Swift cracking the coding interview. So if you're in the chat, check out that link. If you're interested in cracking the coding interview, all Swift answers there. Mayanik, is there any way to launch an app from another app in iOS? Yes, it's called deep linking. Too much to get into right now, but yes, it is possible. If you look up URL schemes and deep linking on Google, you should probably get some answers there. But yeah, it is possible. Victor says, how's the job search going? Found your channel recently. Amazing job. Thanks, Victor. So like I mentioned earlier, the reason I haven't put out a vlog recently is because I'm waiting to hear back on an offer. They said I should hear back by the end of the week. Here it is, Friday. So I'm hoping to hear something today. What's going on is they're talking with the client they're working with to hash out final details. So I'm hoping it works out. Hopefully I'll have some answers today. So we'll find out. If that does fall through, I did kind of stumble upon another contract that I'll probably take to get me through. But basically all my eggs are in that basket, just to be honest right now, with the full-time job. But I do have contracts as a backup if it doesn't fall through. So I'll be fine either way, but hopefully the full-time job works out. Alessandro, have you ever felt the need to know more about the iOS works? I mean, memory swapping, paging. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a common feeling, but yes, there's obviously the more information and knowledge you have, the better you're going to be. So yes, there are certain times when I did feel like, man, I wish I knew how this really worked at a lower level. But that's pretty rare. It doesn't happen all the time, and it's a lot to learn. You'll kind of learn that stuff as you go over time. All right, guys. Yogesh, how to open another app by clicking a button in our app. Please make a video. Okay, so yeah, I'll make a video on deep linking. Anon says, great. All right, guys, that wraps up the question, and we're at about the 30-minute mark. So thanks for coming. I'm still doing the live stream on Sunday morning. This was just kind of a random impromptu live stream. Still going to go Sunday morning, and I'm going to talk about my contracts in detail Sunday morning. Not like NDA stuff, but I'll talk about the contracts, like how they're working, and basically you'll kind of get some insight into what it's like working with iOS contracts. So hey, Bibin, I'm actually just wrapping up. I know you probably just popped in, but just wrapping up. Check back Sunday morning, 9 a.m. Pacific. We're going to do a live stream again. So all right, guys, see you.